Hi, everybody. Welcome to Avini Vibes. This is our Thursday night call, and I'm going to remind everyone we make no medical claims. And as Rik says, a cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. And we've got Chip on tonight, and we're going to be talking about autoimmune. And then we also are going to have Dr. Nakita Warren join us, and we're going to talk about autoimmune. So, Chip, come share with
Well,
us.
sure. Well, thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of springboarding from something we talked about last week. And it really is important because you look out in the human population, there's a lot of troubles. And if you are one of our exotic healthcare practitioners, which lots of those join Avini, then people have searched the world over looking for help before they find you guys, oftentimes. And one of the things that'll put them in that sort of a situation is that they become sensitive to every little thing. They can't eat anything, touch anything, breathe anything. Some of them wind up being sequestered in a room without drapes or carpets and almost nothing else in there because they can't even tolerate clothing. Um,
Hmm.
Interestingly enough, the answer Avini wise is the same as the autoimmune issues and the same as many other issues. Remember, well, I remember. I'm going to ask you guys to remember it right this second. When you see what Avini's doing, essentially they're removing the pollutions that have accumulated in your system that don't leave fast enough, and some of them accumulate and just get to be more and more your entire life. And so in the autoimmune world, in case you haven't been around somebody like that, oftentimes they try to put a name on it. But then the symptoms they have are similar to another one. Think of all the different things that are autoimmune. There's the one where they get the pattern on their face that looks like a wolf. So they call it after the um, Latin name for wolves. Lupus is a wolf in Latin. Or the ones that gets a 12-letter F word where everything hurts. Or the ones where the bones start to deteriorate and they abbreviate it with a couple of letters. Might start when you're a kid or when you're an adult.
Hmm.
The ones when your bowels just are inflamed all the time, or your skin starts to, get just breakouts of any kind. And it all goes back. And if you can think in this way, if you remember when you were a kid in the math, and I always liked it when they say, okay, all you have to do is simplify this. I thought, simplify. Oh, yeah. Well, it looks complicated. If we could simplify it, that would be better for me. Right. And it's the same way with healthcare. If you can simplify it, if you can find the common denominator, if you can move everything to one side of the equation and what's left on the other side is the answer, that's pretty handy. That's a good way to think. And so I'm going to jump right to the punchline. We look like a solid object, but we're not. We're really a tube. And things that we swallow are in the tube, but they're not really in us in a way because they haven't left and gone out into the tissues. As we digest and absorb things, then they get out into us, right? Well, where is the decision made about what gets out and what does not get out of that tube? It's in our intestines, correct? And so a little bit more detail about how that occurs. Amazingly enough, in a operation that is so caustic enough to dissolve meat, right? or dissolved plants, the decisions are made by a single cell thick lining of the gut. And they're made where one cell touches another. Those are called the tight junctions. And if you start getting the term leaky gut, people have heard leaky gut. Well, now you're going to think, yeah, well, I know a little bit more about it than I did a minute ago. They're thinking that, there's cracks inside of the intestines and maybe pussy, bloody places where things are leaking in and out. Well, yeah, that's part of it too. But on a smaller scale, if those cells are not healthy and those tight junctions that are deciding if something is digested enough to be a nutrient and go out into your bloodstream and circulate and be useful, if those decisions are not being made right, guess what's waiting right outside of your intestines? 70% of your immune system looking to protect you from the outside world coming from the inside out. And so if something comes out that isn't quite digested yet, maybe if it would have went another 6 inches or another foot, it would have been okay, but it got out too soon. And it's not simple enough. And your immune system looks at it and says, don't know what that is. I better set up a defense against it. You're headed right down that sensitive to everything path, right down that autoimmune thing. Your immune system gets overwhelmed, and now it all starts. So if you begin to use Avini products and all those things get better, think about how complex the medical intervention for all that stuff is, right? Now flip over and think how simple it is in Avini. Simplify. And I apologize. I get a kick out of, some of the details. If you don't enjoy the details, just boil it down to, okay, I'm a tube, and if the wrong things get out, my immune system fights with it. Now I got autoimmune problems. Now I'm sensitive to everything. Skip over the other stuff. But on the other hand, if you like that stuff, then you can remember that too. And so it's really, really common for people to love Avini because they had trouble existing in the polluted world before. And I kind of, it's, there's nothing funny about it. I say every time we make something that's useful to us, it comes with a little bit of danger and a little bit of harm. I'm talking to you guys right now on my cell phone, frying my brain. I made a decision that it's, I guess, worth the risk because I like you guys but you kind of know you're getting hurt. You fill up your car at the gas tank and you smell the gas and you think, well, that probably, I understand what that is, but what I just smelled there, or you open the cupboards under the sink and you smell that and you think, well, that smells like chemicals. Or, you open the washing machine and say, oh, that springtime fresh smell is probably actually chlorine. That kind of thing. You hop in the swimming pool and you swim, every morning for years I swam and, dyed my hair blonde. And so we accept those things because, we enjoy the benefits of, the conveniences of the world. But now we have, because of Avini, we're able to deal with some of the worst things, make them not so dangerous. And so it's really important because when the cell defender picks it up, or the detoxolite that's in several of our products picks it up, it is actually filtered through the kidneys. So how do kidneys tell what to filter? And these are just little things that you can use if you want. And it makes you sound like you know something. I'm not smart. I'm secondhand smart. Somebody else told me this and I say this stuff. It's like you can, I'm 200 and actually a little bit lighter. I'm 229-pound minor bird imitating Rik Deitsch. So I'm getting leaned out a little bit. I was 275 at one time, and it's a bit much to be, almost 75 years old and that big. But, he would say things like the kidneys sort things out by size, shape, and charge. Oh, that sounds clever, doesn't it? Oh, you must know something. And you guys call me with docs on the phone all the time, or once they've talked to me, oftentimes the doctors will call me with patients in their office trying to figure something out. I mean, that's pretty normal in my little world to have a doc call with the patient in the office, say, okay, this is what we're up against. What do we know if we put our heads together? And I love that idea of, putting our heads together and outsmarting these kind of problems, right? And that's essentially, if you have Avini in your hands, you're capable of just, introducing Avini products and very good chance that they'll hold up their end of the stick and you'll solve the problem. I mean, you've all done that. I suspect every single person that's here has had that experience, which is like way, way cool experience. It makes, I think about sometimes, um, everybody knows what nurse's work is, right? Why does someone become a nurse? Because they want to help people, right? Why someone become a veterinarian? Because they want to help animals. Now, I thought I wanted to be a vet at one time, and you had to have perfect grades. It was more difficult than being a doctor. I mean, you had to have perfect grades in Nebraska because you had to get into Kansas or Colorado. And I mean, if you had a B someplace along the way, you couldn't get in. And that was a death knell if you're in Nebraska and trying to get into, Colorado State or get into Kansas for vet school. But then I noticed when the veterinarian comes, where do the animals go? Do they come, hippity hopping over to greet the vet? No, they plaster themselves against the other end of you know, the other end of the corral. They go to the opposite end of the stall. They go to as far away from him as they can get. And I thought, whoa, well, okay, I understand. He thinks he's helping, but they don't get that, right? And the humans now are getting more and more that way with the medical system. It won't go. And here, but if you become a nurse, or even more, like a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, that's just a young person who's willing to dive in and help, and with a few months of training. But guess what their day is? Basically cleaning up body fluids, right? That's what it is all day long. And with the intent of helping people, and they do help them one at a time, and thank God somebody's willing to do it. But a lot of them wind up here. Why? So much more effective, so much broader range of problems. And a lot of it's done over the telephone or over a Zoom call. Who would think that you guys could be as effective as you are against the problems that you come across with a phone call suggesting a product? That would be, I mean, with what you have sitting next to you on your desk, if you were a lot of the places I was in India, you'd be the best medical facility. Heck, I'm not so sure in New York City, one of you wouldn't be the best person to run into if somebody had a sensitivity or an autoimmune problem, or tumors growing, or horrible discomfort that you, just with the ideas and the products you have access to, wouldn't be the best thing they ever came across. And isn't that kind of normally what we hear? That somebody came across you guys and, it was your inspiration inspiration or your calling to be their angel, and you stepped in, and oh my goodness, what just happened? I mean, since I came downstairs, I heard Robin and Glenna call Marcia upstairs just a minute ago, and they said, "We got another one." And Marcy said, "Another what?" "Another miracle." And this is just a matter of, less than a month, somebody in big trouble and got an all clear today. Amazing. I think it was their pastor's, somebody in their pastor's family. And so isn't it neat when this works, when you need it to, when your family needs it to, and when people that you care about need it to, and you can depend on it. It's not like some of the time, part of the time, if you are looking at research and how research works, one of the most important attributes of great research is that it's duplicable, and reproducible. And at the magnitude of effect, you don't have to measure with a micrometer. So I happen to just flip up and I'm looking at Joe now. Hi, Joe. And so we had a little saying that we used to have in the Air Force. We measure with a micrometer, okay? Mark it with a grease pencil and cut it with an axe. Well, that's kind of the way the medical system works, right? I mean, the measurement, the diagnostics, and that stuff is so precise. And then we're just going to burn you to the ground anyway. I mean, why did we, but here we support you no matter what. It doesn't matter exactly what the problem was. Now, usually we run this call in the opposite order, and I listen to Dr. Nakita, and then I pick up the things that she inspired me to say and go from there. And but today, I got here a minute before she did, so hopefully I've inspired her a little bit. Or I know she's ready for the same topic, and so if I could introduce and let you guys enjoy Dr. Nakita Warren for a little bit. Are you good to go, Nakita? Would you unmute and take the floor, please?
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry I was a little late. I had to run and get an oil change, and it was a little bit later for me than I needed to. We have to go out of town. I had an elder, one of my elders in our family passed. She was 100. I think she's my great great aunt. I can't remember exactly how she fits in there, but it's my grandma's aunt. So we're going to be driving down. I had to run and get an oil change tonight. So I apologize for that. But one of the things Christine was telling me about was she was having some issues with her she picked up a box and she had a little injury and her whole body like went haywire. And so one of the things that is interesting that one of the things she wanted us to talk about this week was hyperimmune response and how that affects how toxins affects it and how our Avini products help it. And when she called me, we were talking, and it was so cool because she was explaining what was happening. And sometimes when you're in the midst of an emergency, you don't see everything, right? And so she was like, "I've been doing my plus relief, and I've been doing this, and everything, right?" And then the two things I didn't hear, I was like, Hey, I think you should do a couple things different." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Take the hydro water." Because I'm sure you're not drinking as much as you usually do, and take our mushrooms. And then she was like, "I can't believe I forgot those two." She was like, "Thank you." And then she said, "I'm getting off the phone. I'm going to take it, And I'm praying that she doesn't have to go to the doctor. But I don't know if you guys had an update before I did. But I'm just gonna pray, and then also wanted to share with you something about what that looks like. What is a hyperimmune response, and how does that How does that work with autoimmune, and how does our products help in those situations? Um, so just real quick, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but an autoimmune disease occurs when the immune system like mistakenly attacks our own body cells or our tissues or organs. And they do that thinking that they're like a foreign invader. And if I like to give analogies, right? So if I'll give you an analogy of an autoimmune disease, it's like a security system in the building, right? And that security system in the building is your immune system. Now, that's supposed to keep all the intruders out, right? So the bacteria and viruses, your immune system is keeping them all out. Now, normally this system recognizes the people who live and work there, that they are safe. Now, but an autoimmune condition, um, what happens is the security system malfunctions and mistakenly sounds the alarm, beep, 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 treating all the employees and everybody in the building like they're intruders, right? So then they send out all these guards and they lock the doors and they break equipment and they eject people who's supposed to be in the building, causing everything to work properly. And sometimes they even eject people or they cause a whole bunch of chaos and damage inside of the building. Now that's like an overview of what the autoimmune disease does. And there are well over 80 recognized autoimmune diseases that we know that affects various systems in our body. Now, when I say that, what is a hyperimmune response? And I'm sure every one of us have experienced something like that. And what that means, or how that occurs, is when our immune system becomes like overactive and it attacks our own cells, right? Now, what that means is it will have inflammation, and those disorders are kind of like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis. You'll hear those names, right? And a lot of the triggers would be like heavy metals and toxins, right? Now, what does all those things do is they disrupt our immune system and they cause a lot of things. Now, let me see if I can say this. I hope everybody understands that so far. Now, let me see what I wanted to say. So some of the heavy metals that now, just to be clear, toxins are not the only things that cause autoimmune diseases, right? Um, Lifestyle changes, infections, lifestyle factors, genetic predispositions, all these can accumulate and cause autoimmune responses. However, a lot of toxins or heavy metals and environmental factors in our community, in our world, can trigger this hyperinflammation response. Some of those things we hear a lot of: cadmium, mercury, pesticides. But one thing that caused me to look at it a little differently was mold and mycotoxins. We don't think about those normally as affecting our autoimmune response, even though we get a sneeze here and it causes us to have an infection, right? But they do. And one of the things that really does all those things affects our gut. And I heard Chip was saying a lot about how our mucosa and those lining breaking and allowing things to disrupt our microbiome is a huge factor in our autoimmune issues. Now, with all of this being said, coming in contact with cadmium or coming in contact with pesticides and herbicides or cleaning product and that BPA, like we were saying last call, and also personal products like parabens and certain dyes, coming in contact with those things cause an inflammatory response in our body. And when that happens, there's a particular cell in our body that helps our immune system. It's called a T cell. And those T cells are like the security guards in our building, and they need to be strong and they need to work well. Unfortunately, those toxins and heavy metals, they disrupt the T cells' ability to, take care of our immune system. So that's mostly the problem with the autoimmune disease, right? So once we have an overproduction or an overactivation of our immune system, and we have that constant low-grade inflammation, you might feel the achy bones, the creaky joints, the sneezing, um, fevers, what they call it, leaky gut, a lot of digestive issues. All those things are depending on what system that symptom is in, it's a different name for that autoimmune disease, right? So what's beautiful is that our products do a couple things. First, we have a way to mitigate our exposure to it by our own choices in life. Yes, we can eat healthier, we can have more organic food, and we can have make sure we have less parabens and don't do the BPA and don't microwave plastics. And those are good, right? However, what about the stuff that's already in our systems and that we don't know that we're allergic to? Like cadmium, which is an exhaust from a car. We don't know we're ingesting it and then causing low-grade inflammations in our body. So how do we eliminate those toxins that are floating around in our system every day? Is with our first product, which is that cell defender, right? And that cleans the blood, makes sure everything gets out of there, right? However, the other thing is when we have inflammation, a lot of times we're sore and achy and not feeling well, and that typically causes us to retain water and a lot of times not feel as thirsty as we normally should. And then we have our hydrotherapy that causes us to drink, and the water goes where it's supposed to go, which helps decrease inflammation. And then we have the pain, pain plus relief, which helps in those situations as well. And you can put that on your ankles, which or bones or joints or anything like that, which helps the topical one. And then we also have a oral one that you can spray, that you can consistently spray to help with internal pains or internal discomforts. Now, systemically, taking the mushrooms, taking the zeolite as well as the fiber, those things help clean the intestinal walls. That helps clean the blood and relieve a lot of the symptoms from the toxic exposure. Now, I hope that answers a huge amount of questions. Chip, did I cover everything? I know you'll tell me, wait a minute, what about this one? But I
Well,
wanted to just,
I always enjoy it when you speak because their eyes, I get to talking to them, their eyes start to glaze over and then it raises back up when you start talking. So you speak in a way that people understand. I think everybody appreciates that. That said, I'm gonna mess with you guys a little bit because there's nothing more fun than a Avini audience. I'm about to introduce one of you, and what I'm about to say isn't the guy I'm about to introduce, but it's how I learned to introduce somebody this way. Okay. So one of the guys that's a little bit older than me was on with me one time, and this is the line, and this line does apply to a guy that's on the phone with us right now, and I'm going to tell you why, but he won't be the first guy I tell you about. The line was, "You all know me. You all know this guy that's on the phone with you right now, but you don't know that you know him." I'm looking at him, trying to see if he realizes it's him. This first guy, he said, "I was the voice on the radio in the Waltons. I was the third guy to die in the Night of the Living Dead. I was Val Ewing's boyfriend when she and Gary were broke up on Knott's Landing. My wife was Stacy Keach's Girl Friday in the Mike Hammer detective movies. They've written music that you would recognize, and that particular guy is in Avini. He's nearly 90 now, and his name is Mafe Nutter. But the guy I'm going to introduce to you right now, you probably know even more than that. He's more of a current event, and you know him because of his inventiveness. And I'm going to go backwards in order of what you will know the most. You know those itty bitty little cups that you peel the top off of and dump in your coffee, and you have to do 50 of them to get enough in your coffee if you like it like me, or you'll mix up different flavors? That was first at 7-Eleven. This guy was a marketing genius for 7-Eleven. And he can tell you, it made him into a wealthy man. Every one of these ideas they paid him very beautifully for. Oh, did I misstate that? But he actually refers to himself as some of his stuff that he'll send you, like email address and stuff, is the big gulp. How many people around here have seen or know what a big gulp is? Well, the big gulp is on the phone with you right now, and I'm going to introduce him to tell his Avini story. And cool thing, also a water skier, found out that I was still doing it, so he did it again. When you're landing at San Francisco, I think he said, and you look out of the airplane window, you look down on the lake that he skis on where his cabin is. I believe that's right. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please introduce one of the people with you tonight, and that's Joe Gershaneck. And Joe offered to speak tonight, so thank you, Joe, for typing in and saying you would do this.
Hey, Chip, thanks so much. And some of you had a chance to hear me talk before. For those of you who haven't, I was the Northern California VP of Marketing for 7-Eleven and was involved in some of the creation of products that many of you have experienced or your children have experienced. How many of you had a child that you took to 7-Eleven on July 11th and they got a free Slurpee? Any of you take your children to do that? If you have any grandchildren or somebody doing that, that's one of the things I created. And Chip was tongue in cheek because if I had 1 billionth of a percent of every big gulp that was sold throughout the United States, I could make everybody on this call a millionaire. Let's not be too aggressive. And that's one of the reasons I've looked at network marketing, because I was very tired of creating things and not having the residual long-term income. And unfortunately, the company changed hands. 7-Eleven went through bankruptcy, and that was my first exposure to network marketing. And I have been in the industry now since 1992. I was only 10 years old when I started, so that's why I look as healthy as I look, and I can still water ski. But the reason I wanted to be on the call tonight with the autoimmune disease is that 68 years old, I was my high school body weight. I could ski as if I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I was completely physical fit, and I had a little bit of swelling around my ankles. And I was, because I was sitting at a computer. I was looking for a network marketing company, so I was sitting at a desk in an office. And so I went to the doctor and said, why is my leg swelling? And he said, looked at my numbers and goes, no, you're perfectly healthy. And so that ended up on a circle, and it just kept getting a little bit worse. I knew a lot about heart disease. I knew a lot about liver problems. I knew a lot about arthritis problems from Rik. And Rik in his first iteration, which was with Rexall Showcase International in the 90s. And making that long story of what I went through come shortened, when I was finally diagnosed that I had an autoimmune disease that attacked my kidneys, scarred them, and destroyed them within a year's period of time, which ultimately led to the experience of being on dialysis, which is one of the worst experiences that you can go through. And I was in an unusual situation because I was still very aggressive with my health and an overactive immune system that normally fought off everything. As a tidbit of correlation to that, I worked with 7-Eleven for 18 years. Guess how many days of work I missed in 18 years? One. The only reason I missed one was because I broke my wrist when I was painting one night. Drove myself to the hospital, and the doctor said, you broke your wrist. And I said, oh, how did I do that? And he goes, well, it's sitting there like this, which kind of is not the right direction. You can't move it. And so I had to take off the next day. I then, over the next 16 years, up until when I was 68, I did not have a cold. I did not have an allergy. I had nothing, no flus, no nothing. Because I had a very strong immune system that for some reason turned into that overdrive that Dr. Nakita was talking about that ended up cooking my kidneys. So what has the Cell Defender done for me? And that was the most poignant issue that I wanted to bring up with Chip and for all of us. With only one kidney, when you get a transplant, which God blessed me with 5 years ago now, you don't have your kidney functioning anywhere near as strong as when you have two kidneys. but I have been taking it, and there's a measurement, which is a definitive measurement on how toxic your body is. And Dr. Nakita can jump in on this. And it's a measurement called creatinine. And creatinine shows the toxicity in your body. The normal range is 0.8 to 1.3. A person with a kidney transplant might be at 1, about 2, maybe a little bit below that, because there's only one kidney. Well, I've been taking the product now for 2 years. I got it down to 1.9, which is in the very good range. That was January of last year. My reading in December of last year was 1.53, which is getting very close to scaring a normal reading with one kidney. So these products work? Yeah, without a doubt.
I just typed an answer to a question in Inner Circle, and I maybe asked Joe and Dr. Nakita. So Joe just talked about a measure of kidney function, creatinine. A similar word is creatine. Could you guys differentiate between those two words, please? And then I'll use this recording to send to that person.
Dr. Nakita, you want to go first? Because you'll be more technical than I, but I can talk to it also.
You want the difference between what?
Creatine.
The kidney measurement, creatinine, and creatine. That's
supplement.
Yes. It sounds like Joe's good to go on it. Maybe we'll go with Joe.
Go ahead.
Creatine is a muscle building product, and people use that to it strengthen their muscles and increase their muscles. And it's very interesting if you are taking that. I've actually had associates who have had high creatinine, exaggerating the difference in pronunciation. And the doctor said, "Oh, you got this number. There's got to be something wrong with you. You got to go through the test." And what they were doing is they were putting these more muscle building, which when you build muscles, you actually burn and get toxicity into your body because of the muscle burn when you're exercising. And so the more that you stimulate that through the creatine, you can then end up having a higher creatinine, which is the measurement of the waste products afterwards. So
Perfect.
consequently, did I nail it?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you did.
Did you want to
You
add to
did.
that, Dr. Nikita?
I just want to say that creatine, like I guess I don't know when creatine is naturally occurring in the body. So we store it, it's amino acid. It's primarily stored in the muscles. That's why when you work out a lot and it's a form of ATP. So when you work out a lot, that causes the byproducts to come out, right? But the relevance to toxins for creatine is that it helps maintain the cellular energy and it protects cells from oxidative damage. Now, what he's talking about creatinine, it's a waste product from the breakdown of the energy production, right? And so that byproduct is the thing that he's saying that creates the elevated levels that is the sign of kidney stress or worsening. And it helps, it actually it is exacerbated when you have exposure to heavy metals and toxins. I hope that helps a little bit.
Would either one of you or both of you say something about the kidney filter rate and what happens with Avini? And maybe, Joe, since you're smart about dialysis, did you then receive a transplant?
Yes, I did. So what ends up happening is if your kidney is not able to do it because it's not functioning, it has to be done. Otherwise, there's a backup in your system that ultimately kills you. And dialysis wasn't really developed until the late 60s on a regular basis, if I recall correctly. And so there were many people dying of, quote, old age, and they actually were dying of toxicity in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s before dialysis was there. Because dialysis is a mechanical filtering process that takes out the toxins out of your system. And you stay on it for anywhere from 4 hours. And I stayed on it for 8 hours because
Wow.
that is a longer purification. And I never want to experience purgatory, or most certainly the other one. And I don't think I'm going there. I may have purgatory because I've not been perfect, let's put it that way. Uh, but I can't imagine anything worse than laying in the dialysis chair for 8 hours. That's
Yeah.
purgatory on earth.
Wow.
That's purgatory
Yeah.
on earth. And you just lay there. If you've ever seen The Matrix, where you see people hook up to machines, that's what dialysis is. And I did 8 hours because I wanted everything taken out. Because as you get older, and Dr. Nakita will comment, is that most of the people at 68 plus are not healthy enough to get a transplant. I went to the Mayo Clinic, and the Mayo Clinic came forward and said, "How'd your kidneys go wrong? You're a perfect specimen." And I go, "I got the autoimmune attack." And they go, "Oh my God." Because my blood pressure was perfect, my muscle tone was perfect, everything was perfect, except that the kidneys had thrown everything into chaos.
So would you
And
say something about qualifying to receive? There are people who need one that can't show that their additional lifespan would be there because they maybe wiped out their kidneys or they wiped out their liver with their lifestyle. You were the opposite of that.
yes, I was the opposite of it, and that's why I was on. You get on a list. There's more than 100,000 people in the United States on the kidney transplant list. And the available kidneys that come up through donations is somewhere around 30,000, 30 to
Yep.
35,000,
Yep.
which means that there's 65,000 people that are not going to get a transplant that need it. And you have to get on a waiting list. And the waiting list is a function of not only how healthy you are, but there is a time accrual. And in many cases, like in the San Francisco Bay Area, the waiting list for me was 10 years, which meant 10 years on dialysis, weakening my body. Dialysis is not a cure, it's a temporary fix, but it takes stuff out of your body, it weakens your body. And so 10 years of dialysis, I would have never qualified for a transplant. In fact, the 1 year on a dialysis, there was a noticeable difference when the Mayo Clinic requalified me to be on the kidney transplant list. So if you have not considered being a donor, please do.
Less than 1% of people who die with kidneys healthy enough to transplant into somebody else die in such a way that their kidneys or their organs can be saved.
Wow.
So it's really difficult. And if you are interacting with a dialysis unit, to be, as healthy as you can be to benefit is super important as well. So Deborah Watson's saying she is an organ donor. So that's pretty cool. I bet you a whole bunch of you have it on your driver's license that you're an organ donor too, right? So here we are, a bunch of people between 70 and 90 that have on our driver's license that we're organ donors.
Yep.
Think about that. How would people feel if they got your kidneys?
Yeah.
I think about that kind of stuff. I'm riding along on my bicycle and, cold Nebraska morning, rolling along 30 miles an hour. I'm thinking, if they knew what I'm like right now, they'd be thrilled to get my pumps. They'd be thrilled to get my filters. So how does a dialysis machine filter? Size, shape, and charge. And here, if you're talking to someone, and this is a very common topic in Avini, because people get a hold of us that have kidney troubles. And they're scared because they know that we're going to, pass the poison through the kidney. Easier, not more difficult to do. But I find that most people who have been on dialysis for years don't know the answer to this question. So it makes them think. That's kind of one of my jobs, is to make everybody think, right? When you get hooked up to the dialysis machine, your blood goes over into the machine. It comes back in a very few minutes clean. Why do you sit there another 3.5, 4, in Joe's case, 8 more hours? Why do you sit there that long? It's because your blood's clean now, but your tissues are still dirty. Now they can give more toxins or metabolic waste to the blood, and it gets cleaned again. Back and forth, exactly the same as if it was going through your body and going through your kidneys. And here's the punchline. Cell Defender works the exact same way. You can't take, 10 gallons of it and be clean, because it cleans the body fluids, and then it takes a little time for the tissues to give more. So that's why we use it frequently. That's why, to make use of all the time, we take it several times a day. Same concept, exact same concept. I think it helps people to understand, why we do what we do.
I wanted to
Would
add
you say?
something.
Yeah. Who is that, Deborah?
That's
Nakita.
Dr. Nakita.
Dr.
Dr.
Nakita.
Oh,
Nakita.
Dr. Nakita, go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to add is that because of the doxoxylite in the bloodstream, it binds those heavy metals, and it's reducing the kidney loads because it's helping eliminate those toxins through the digestive tract instead of the renal pathways, which allows the kidneys to actually heal themselves a little bit. So that's one of the beautiful things about our detoxolite.
Easier instead of more difficult. Would you guys say something about filter rate when they measure the filter rate of a kidney, what that ought to be and what that means?
You mean the GFR?
Yes.
Yep.
And say what it means. Say what GFR stands for. I know the last two are filter rate. I don't know what the G is. Maybe general filter rate. I don't know.
It's called glomerular filtration rate, and it measures how well your kidneys filter waste, toxins, and excess fluids from your body.
I love it when she speaks Latin to us, don't you?
She's been talking to Rik too much.
So a normal rate would be like 90 or higher. That's considered normal. I think 60 is like that indicates some kidney dysfunction. And if you have like 15 or something, below 15, that's considered kidney failure. And the importance of that is that rate is because our kidneys is our primary detox organ, and it filters all the byproducts that we use or utilize in our body. That's the urea, the creatinine, the environmental toxins. Everything is filtered through our kidneys, as well as those heavy metals like lead, mercury, and cadmium. So it's really important to take our detoxolite to make sure those heavy metals don't go through the kidneys or try to alleviate the amount of time they go through them. Is there anything else you want me to tell me about the
We have
I'm
somebody
so
that
glad
asked
we
a
have
question.
her.
Okay, sorry.
There are two people that asked questions, and
we had somebody that asked
And we
questions.
got to get Deborah to say something about being a donor too.
Oh,
please.
Deborah just asked the question. Should we?
Oh, okay. Well, Deborah, speak up, Deborah.
Yeah,
you got
go ahead, Deborah.
Good. Hello.
Hey, Deborah.
Hi. My question. Well, I became a donor after really watching. I don't know if you all seen the movie Q with Denzel Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I seen that movie, and it moved me and it inspired me to actually become a donor. And my cousin husband unexpectedly passed away about a year ago. This past December, and they did, I don't know what you call it, but it's like when you donate your kidney or you donate your organ, you walk down the corridor to the hospital and they ring the bell.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they did. So because some of his organs were still in good shape, he was able to save three people's lives. So that was very touching and inspiring, and it was just lovely because my cousin actually recorded it and sent it to me.
Wow.
So there was
that I
recently, like within the last month or so, a woman like Deborah who gave a kidney to her mom, saved her mom. But then her kidney got attacked like Joe's was. And so then she went right to the top of the transplant list because she was a donor. And they still didn't have it. So what they did was there's new technology, and they're able to modify a pig's kidney genetically enough and have enough anti-rejection drugs so that they could transplant. And you can imagine the expense and complexity of that. But this is just within the last month, a woman who did what Deborah did received a pig's kidney.
Wow.
Interesting.
And so that's really interesting.
Different.
Wow.
That's so true. But
I,
there were two
I
other
heard
questions
about
I'd
that.
like to.
But I wanted to know also with you, Joe,
Yes.
because you said you noticed that your feet were swollen. Now,
Yes.
was that only in the summertime, in the hot season weather, or was that throughout the whole year? Because I mentioned that before on this call that I have retention of water, but it's usually just during the summer months, like the hot weather. But it sparked my curiosity because when you said, to get swelling, and then it became an autoimmune deficiency with your kidney. So it's kind of like, oh my goodness, like what should I do? Should I go get tested?
There's a couple things because when you hear somebody speaking, they like I'm talking to you right now. There's a whole bunch of things tied together with this. The
Hmm.
the indicator that I had was sitting at a desk, and it was during the period of time as my knees bent. So most of us, as you get older, you have a little bit of swelling if you're sitting with your legs bent all the time. But I was so healthy that I said, how come this has happened to me? It didn't happen years ago. I was kind of naive because I didn't think about the fact I was 66 years old. So I have found that in the summertime, I have more swelling in the heat, especially when I was on before the transplant and also on dialysis. And it seems like I couldn't get the water out of my system because I would drink water. In fact, when you're on dialysis, they monitor your water and they take the water out of your system because your kidneys can't function and get the water out. And it's actually, if they mess up on how much they're taking out, it gives you muscle cramps that can make a grown man cry. Uh, and so there's a measurement factor taking the water out because the kidneys are not able to process to create the urine, which takes the water out. So if your kidney functions starts to go down a little bit, you're not producing the urine, and that retains the water in your legs. So there was another question that Dr. Nakita will most certainly come back and add to that. But there were two other questions. The first question was, what did I say to my doctor about doing it? Using the product. And that's my experience with Rexall. I had hundreds of doctors in my business, hundreds of doctors in my business. And one of the key things I've taught everybody whom I work with is you never, never, never ask a doctor, do you think this will work? And the reason you don't ask the doctor, Dr. Nakita's nodding his head, is because the doctor, out of their position, will never say yes to something that they don't know, have a full understanding of what it is.
Mhm.
So the question, the word, the phraseology is, doctor, I came across this particular product that's helped some people. Is there any reason that I shouldn't take it? Is there anything in it that could hurt me in the process of taking it? Then the doctor will take a look at it and say, hmm. And in many cases, they'll say, no, I don't know if it'll work. I actually, or the more allopathic type of doctor would say, I don't think it'll really work, but if you want to try it, you can try it. But don't ever ask them if they think it will work. So when I brought the cell defender to the doctor, I was actually exposed to a company that sometimes is discussed called Avon, which is a precursor to Avini. And we had a zeolite product before them that had in it humic acid. And Chip could jump in on this one. It was a dirty cleaner. It's a dirty cleaner. It was black. I mean, it looked like coal, had the fumic acid in it. And my first thing my doctor looked at and said, no, don't take this. There's something in it that could be contraindicated for your kidney. And it was a fumic acid. When I brought them Cell Defender, they said, oh no, it's a zeolite. There's some studies on it that could be helpful. If you want to try it, you can try it. And with that drop of numbers that I have just recently, I was on when you have a kidney transplant, you're on a 1 week recall. Go in, you go in, you go in, go in. Then it goes to every 2 weeks. Then it goes to every month. Then it goes to uh, every other month. At the beginning of just actually 3 months ago, when the doctor had seen my numbers going down, he came back and said, I don't need to see you for a year, which is an indication of how strong he believes my kidneys are functioning. Dr. Kita is nodding her head. because the doctor wants to see you when there's a question mark. The
So,
other part that someone asked is, should we all have a creatinine reading or a GFR reading? If you go through a standardized physical, that's one of the normal tests that you'll get.
so Joe, Doc Carter just typed in and he asked if you would go over, obviously we talked about you being on one end of the spectrum health-wise to receive a transplant, and most people aren't.
Yes.
They've harmed. So, but if you're a person who is needs to qualify, who needs to raise your health to qualify to receive a transplant or an operation or a procedure of some kind, would Avini be appropriate to in that quest? Could you say something about that? I see Dr. Nakita bobbing her head too. So for those that can't hear it rattle, I'll have her talk after Joe. But her expression on her face is awesome. So Joe, would you do it, and then Dr. Nakita too, please?
Yes. I would do anything and everything to keep your body as healthy as possible from an eating standpoint and nutritional supplements as strong as possible. There are certain things that tax your kidney, and if you stop consuming them, that's less tax on your kidney. Uh, before I was exposed to Rik's involvement, which was coming after that bad uh, detoxing product, I had an experience with a previous better one, not as good as Rik's, but a previous better one. And on dialysis, I dropped my creatinine level 25%. So I had taken it from the high levels of 6, down to almost 5, which then shows the doctors that you're, quote, healthier. Everything that makes you healthier will give you the higher level of potentiality for the transplant. And when they look at the transplant, what they look at is your health, and then also your match to the transplanted kidneys are available. Latest technology allows some adjustments where it doesn't have to be a perfect match, but there are criteria. So anything that you can do to lose weight, to keep your blood sugar stabilized, to keep yourself physically fit, to go away from the high fat items, to stay away from dairy, to stay away from alcohol, and any of those things, increase your body's strength. I was just blessed with the fact that I was in such good shape ahead of time that the doctors were astounded. Everywhere I went, to potentially look at getting a transplant, they were going, "Wow, why are you here?" In fact, one doctor said, "Why are you here?" He said, "Well, look at my kidney numbers." Oh, that's why. Because he was looking through the list and he goes, "Your blood pressure's fine, your weight's fine, you're not overweight, your sugar's fine." And he goes, "Why are you
So
here?"
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. That's beautifully explained. And I'm going to ask Dr. Nakita to answer that same question and then hand it back to Carol Witt to close
Okay.
the call. You'll finish, but I did want you to know when you get the you'll get a formal looking letter for being on tonight's call, and it will be from Rik as a professor at Florida Atlantic University, and that's where your 3 hours of credit for being on tonight's call will come from.
That's cute.
Back to
All
you,
right,
Dr. Nakita, and then back to Carol after that.
okay, so yes, you definitely make sure you all have your overall health, but also make sure you follow the treatment plan. Whatever your doctor's recommending for you, you have to make sure you're following it. Go to your dialysis appointments on time. Take your medications. Make sure you do those things, right? But also make sure you do the other end. Try to see if you can find a live donor, not just wait for the transplant list. Try to see if you can look at family, friends, community people. Um, um, the other thing is make sure that you optimize your place on the list by you talking to multiple centers. Don't just look at one center. You can be listed on more than one transplant center. So don't just look at one center, right? But also stay in communication. You have to make sure you regularly check in with your people and make sure that you have up-to-date testing that they require, because sometimes they change the requirement. Um, You want to keep your antibodies very low. So you want to make sure you avoid transfusions or any kind of desensitization therapies that might influence your antibodies in your blood. You always want to stay educated and network, network, network. I assert that Mr. Gope was talking to every doctor he talked to. He was
Yes.
energetic. He was sharing his goals. He was sharing his aspirations. If you connect and keep in contact with people and stay in groups and organizations, people will remember you and they will recommend you. And the reason why I say that is because not only do you're looking at it from a transplant point of view, but there's a panel of people that get together to see where that organ goes. And you want them to have the best outlook of who you are and that your lifestyle choices, you quit smoking, you're losing weight, you're maintaining health, you're doing all the things necessary to make sure that kidney is going to stay healthy. And that was definitely going to be your greatest asset in getting a kidney.
Yep,
Beautiful.
I agree. Let me just hitchhike on that because I didn't bring it up. San Francisco was a 10-year wait. Sacramento was a 5-year wait.
Whew.
Uh, University of Michigan was a 4.5-year wait. University of Idaho was a 36-month wait. So when you talk about you have to qualify for each hospital, and it's not it's kind of a little bit like the if all the kidneys went to just the biggest geographic area, it would then leave the other people out. But the issue is that you you have to be able to get to wherever you're going to get the transplant within a period of time, and you also have to commit to being living there for at least 6 weeks after.
Hmm.
So I was on the transplant list in Idaho, was on the transplant list in Scottsdale, I was on the transplant list in Michigan. I had family back there, and I could make it there in time. And surprisingly, it was Sacramento that came up on the draw. And I was, and again, speaking to Dr. Nakita, she'll understand this. They found a perfect match for me
Wow.
out of the six
And
criteria.
and
Six
just
criteria.
the other thing is just because you are healthy, it's fine. If you have any kind of disease or any type of inflammation or diabetic, you still can be approved for diabetic for kidney transplant. Just make sure you, like I said, take your medicine, stay in
Yeah,
communication, and do the things necessary. And also think outside the box.
yeah,
Sometimes diabetics can have a kidney pancreas transplant, which gives you way more pool of donors to get a transplant. So even if you're diabetic, you might have a bigger pool to get a kidney from if you open yourself up to getting a kidney plant transplant. And that alleviates the diabetic as well as the kidney issues because the pancreas takes care of the diabetic issue. So it's a lot of things that you have to look at that I hope this call helps someone think outside of the box.
Hmm. Wow.
the person who asked about dairy, you can call me back later. Uh, and whoever your sponsor is, they'll be able to give you a number that you can text me. I forget who it was.
Wow.
Hana.
Okay. Beautiful. Absolutely. What an amazing call tonight, guys. I feel like I'm walking away with an MD degree on autoimmune. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nakita, Joe, and Chip. Thank you. Oh, Alan, you have a question. Go ahead. Real quick.
There's a question out there. How does Cell Defender help in this process?
Well, it's kind of like a pre-kidney. It gathers things up. And so as the cell defender fills itself, remember, it starts out with a negative charge. It fills itself with things that are positively charged. It actually is able to take things from us that hurt us because they are too positively charged. But as you get the combination of the two, they become near neutral in charge. Now it's very easy for the kidney to sort by size, shape, and charge what it could not even get at before. So it's like a pre-filter almost that makes it easy, not more difficult for the kidney, not more difficult for the dialysis machine either. Very,
Yes,
very
exactly.
easy. And if you were on the machine, you could be taking it while you're on the machine. And the morning you're about to go in, you'd want to, use that time as best as you can. If you can't, if you're someone who cannot consume much water during the time between your dialysis, if your kidneys don't take off water either, and you're real limited, you may need to take just a little on the off days and then kind of gear up as you're getting ready to go in that morning, and maybe even use the time while you're there. Who's going to care what you put a few drops in your mouth? They won't even know what you're up to.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Wow.
Thank you very much.
never mind.
Better put a pin in it, Carol.
Okay.
Okay, Ed, you have a question?
Go ahead.
Quickly.
No, real fast. Just one quick thing. Dr. Nakita, you're awesome. I was in a convention in Dallas, Carol, and I remember standing next to Nakita, and Rik was on stage going through all of his scientific stuff, and I said, "Do you understand any of that?" She said, "I understand every word of it." Wow. Okay. And I will tell you, Joe Gershaneck, I met in Dallas, and Joe, I'm just going to be honest. Yeah, he had a mask on. You look very feeble. You look kind of weak. And the difference, now I saw you in Vegas in April, and I was like, wow. Now I see you now. It is, guys, it is unbelievable, the turnaround. I mean, you look fantastic.
Thank you.
Remember that little line, from Ed. This comes from smart, and it attracts smart. I mean, look who's with you on the calls. Look who's with you in Avini. Look at Joe, a marketing genius, a Rexall major leader, is here with you. Ed, pro baseball player. Alan, railroad. I guess he was the guy in the Monopoly game that owned all the railroads. I don't know. Hannah, the lady that doesn't get hurt when she gets run over by cars. I mean, all the people. Carol, for goodness sake. Anyway, blessings on everybody. Thank you for, what fun we have. I mean, what an important thing we get to do. Who would think it would be fun to do this? But it is, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
Dr. Nakita, real quick. Are you in the inner circle?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I have a
Yes.
question. It's gonna take too long, so I'll let Carol close out.
All right.
I'll ask. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
guys. Thank you for an amazing call tonight. Thank you.
Blessings on Christine. We love her so much. We need her back.
Absolutely. She'll be back.
Yes.
She'll be back, guys. She's a fighter. She'll be back and even better. All right. So, guys, you will get the recording will go up, and I'll make sure that the recording gets out to everyone. Anyone that wants this recording that doesn't know how to get it, please message me, YEA THRIVE @gmail.com, and I will make sure that you get on the list that I send it out to you for the recordings. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Good night.
Good night. Good night. Great job, Dr. Nakita and
Thank you.
Joe and Chip.
Thank you all.
Very good.
You are
I
a true
enjoyed
gift.
it.
Yes.
Yes.
Good
Absolutely.
night.
Good night, all. See you next week.
Good night.
Bye.
Yes.